It's me or them.
Molly Qerim's exit from ESPN didn't just surprise fans, it shook the entire sports world. And now she's finally breaking her silence, dropping a bombshell that points straight at Stephen A. Smith. For years, Stephen A. has been the one calling people out, but this time, it looks like the heat's on him. Let's get into it because this story is way deeper than anyone realized. It all started with what looked like a normal Monday. Molly Qerim, one of ESPN's top on-air talents, showed up to work like she always did. Since joining the network back in 2006, she'd built her career from the ground up, starting behind the scenes in digital and mobile, then becoming the face of the iconic morning debate show, First Take in 2015. Alongside Stephen A. Smith, she helped turn that show into a ratings monster, hitting its biggest audience ever in 2023. But behind the smiles and smooth debates, something much bigger was brewing. Get out. Something nobody saw coming. Her departure wasn't announced with a press conference or a tearful farewell. Nope.
You can't wake up and be Stephen A. It takes work. In the end, we all have people to answer to.
Instead, Molly quietly dropped the news in a short Instagram story, thanking ESPN, her co-workers, and the fans who'd supported her for nearly 2 decades. She called her time there a dream come true and hinted at exciting things ahead. But what caught everyone off guard was what she didn't say. No reason for leaving, no mention of what's next, and definitely no sign of trouble. On the surface, it looked peaceful, but that silence spoke volumes. Now here's where things start getting wild. On Monday, September 15th, Molly came into the First Take studio like any other day, did her hosting duties, smiled through the debates, wrapped up the show, and walked out. Just another workday, right? Except that was her last one. The next morning, the internet lit up. ESPN insiders were scrambling, fans were confused, and even Stephen A. himself seemed caught completely off guard. That calm Instagram post suddenly looked more like a cover-up for something explosive brewing behind the scenes, and it gets even crazier. According to reports, her resignation was supposed to happen later, at the end of the year. But after a leak from Sports Business Journal, everything changed overnight. Her exit was pushed up immediately. Think about that. A smooth months away transition suddenly turned into an emergency exit. Something clearly went down behind the scenes that ESPN wasn't ready to deal with. This wasn't just a regular resignation. This was a power move that flipped the script overnight. Behind closed doors, ESPN confirmed that Molly had been deep in contract talks. The network wanted her to stay, offering her new opportunities and even floating the idea of expanding her role. But Molly wasn't having it. She decided to move on, fast. What really makes this suspicious though, is how Stephen A. Smith found out. His reaction said it all. He didn't sound prepared. He didn't sound briefed. He sounded stunned. During the following broadcast, you could hear the disbelief in his voice. That's not a man who saw it coming. That's someone reacting to chaos in real time.
Last night, she abruptly resigned as the host of the show. And to say that I'm quite sad about it is an understatement. Molly is a friend. Molly is a co-worker. Molly is somebody that I have leaned on many occasions in the past, as she has done when it comes to me.
Then there's the corporate spin. ESPN's president of content, Burke Magnus, released a polished statement praising Molly's professionalism and her massive role in First Take's success. He called her an incredible talent and said they hoped she would continue with the network. He even claimed there was no controversy, just business as usual. But let's be real, if everything was so normal, why the panic, why the instant exit, why the emotional reaction from Stephen A? It doesn't add up. Magnus also mentioned a 30 to 45 day tryout period to test new hosts. Names like Shay Cornett, Christine Williamson, and Monica McNutt were thrown into the mix. That right there tells us ESPN didn't have a backup plan ready. They were caught off guard. If this was truly just a business decision, the transition would have been smooth. Instead, it felt rushed, improvised, and fueled by tension. And now that Molly's starting to speak up, the whispers inside ESPN are growing louder. Was this about money, power, or something more personal between her and Stephen A? Because according to those close to the situation, this wasn't some routine exit. It was a battle behind the cameras, and the fallout is only just beginning. Behind the scenes, ESPN wasn't just dealing with a simple farewell. This was the result of months, maybe even years, of quiet tension finally snapping. What looked like a peaceful exit was actually the outcome of intense business negotiations, personal frustrations, and silent power struggles that had been brewing under the surface for far too long. And if you want proof that this wasn't just a typical goodbye, it's right there in Molly Qerim's Instagram announcement.
To be blunt, It came as a shock. I was not aware that this is something that she was contemplating doing. But in the end, she made her decision. And we have to move on as a show. I don't like it. I'm not happy about it. Because I appreciate her and what she has meant to me, what she has meant to the show, what she has meant to the network, what she's meant to the business. And I'm going to miss her.
She thanked her fans, appreciated her colleagues, and hinted at future projects. But the most shocking part, she didn't mention Stephen A. Smith even once, not a single word. Now that might sound small, but in the TV world, especially after a decade-long partnership, that's huge. When Shannon Sharpe walked away from Undisputed, he publicly thanked Skip Bayless. When Max Kellerman left First Take, there was mutual respect, shout-outs, and a proper send-off. But Molly, silence. Not one personal acknowledgement. For her co-host of 10 years, that silence speaks louder than any statement could. It's even more surprising because on screen, Molly and Stephen A. were marketed as this unstoppable duo, a polished professional tag team who made First Take one of ESPN's crown jewels. Fans saw chemistry, camaraderie, and seamless collaboration, but behind the lights, the truth might have been way less harmonious because according to those close to the situation, that same chemistry might have been covering up some serious strain. Molly's career, of course, wasn't built solely on First Take. She's worked for CBS Sports and the NFL Network, proving herself as one of the sharpest voices in sports media. She's also been open about her struggles with endometriosis, earning respect for her honesty and strength.
Now, the last part of it is, this is the twist. She wanted to do other stuff. No, basically. You want to host your own show? No, basically. You want more money? Not much. Now, who signs off on all the money there? Think about it. Think about it. The bosses. But who are the bosses? That's Stephen A. Smith as well.
But when she announced her departure from ESPN on September 16, 2025, what should have been a smooth, dignified closure suddenly turned into a firestorm. It was presented as a voluntary move, not a firing, yet everything about the timing and tone screamed otherwise. And the aftermath, pure chaos. ESPN's president of content, Burke Magnus, claimed that the exit was accelerated due to leaks, and that the company already had plans for a 30 to 45 day tryout phase for new hosts, with names like Christine Williamson, Shea Cornette, and Monica McNutt already floating around. But let's think about that for a second. If they already had replacements lined up, why were they still negotiating a new contract with her at the same time? You don't offer someone a new deal and secretly prepare their exit unless something messy was happening behind closed doors. This contradiction reveals the heart of the situation, hidden power moves and fragile alliances.
Perkins had his deal. And when Perkins was up, remember? Perkins was getting a day job rate, and he turned that into $700,000 a year job. Perkins just talked about that recently, about how Stephen A. Smith has that pull. Stephen A. Smith even talked about that when he checked Cam Newton recently, talking about, hey, I've hooked a lot of guys up with money around here.
ESPN was trying to control the narrative, but in doing so, they exposed just how unstable things really were. And in the middle of it all stood Stephen A. Smith, the face of First Take, the man whose name has become synonymous with the show itself, which brings us to the most critical part of the story, the power dynamics and Stephen A.'s reaction. When the news broke, Stephen A.'s initial response was emotional but careful, too careful. He expressed shock, sadness, and respect for Molly's decision, but he also chose his words like someone walking through a minefield. And then came the line that had everyone raising their eyebrows. Do I have an idea? Of course I do. Am I gonna share it with you? No, because again, that's her story to tell. That single quote set the internet ablaze. It was clear he knew something, but he wasn't saying it. That kind of statement doesn't calm rumors, it feeds them. Critics wasted no time calling him out. On the Speakeasy podcast, hosts Emmanuel Acho, Kieran Hickey Simple, and LaShawn McCoy went straight for the jugular, accusing Stephen A. of stirring the pot and making things worse. They claimed that by using words like abruptly resigned and hinting at undisclosed details, he made the whole situation sound way more dramatic than it needed to be. Acho especially pointed out the irony, how Stephen A. claimed to respect her privacy while simultaneously dropping cryptic clues that sent fans into a frenzy, and honestly, they had a point.
The one thing that was unexpected was the timing of all this, Magnus told Dice. She, Molly, put out a statement because there was a report on it, so it kind of got out of our respective controls once that happened.
Because by holding back just enough information, Stephen A. left everyone guessing. It was like dangling bait in front of millions of curious viewers, and it worked. The public couldn't stop talking about it. The debate wasn't just about Molly leaving anymore. It was about why she left and what role Stephen A. might have played in it. That's what makes this story so much deeper than just a professional split. It's about power, who has it, who's losing it, and who's using it behind the scenes. Because in a network like ESPN, image is everything, and when cracks start to show in their most polished partnerships, it exposes something bigger, a system built on control, ego, and influence. And as we dig further into this saga, it's becoming more and more obvious that Molly's quiet goodbye wasn't the end of a story. It was the start of a reckoning. What Emmanuel Akko and others were really saying was that Stephen A. Smith's so-called respectful response wasn't just about paying tribute. It was a calculated move to stir speculation and keep all eyes on him.
So when that report comes out, I guess it triggers her, or more importantly, she's like, why am I sitting in a situation that I know won't get better? Think about it. You too. Beat it up in the comments. Tell me your thoughts about it. But when you know you need to do something and you know it's best for you, what you waiting for?
And when you start to look deeper into how power actually works inside ESPN, that strategy starts to make perfect sense. Because let's be clear, Stephen A. Smith isn't just the loudest voice on First Take. He's the boss behind the scenes too. Most fans don't realize this, but Stephen A. isn't just a star. He's also an executive producer on the show. That means he has real control over who gets hired, who gets screen time, and even who gets paid what. So when someone like Molly Qerim suddenly walks away after 10 years, you can't just look at it like a regular job change or like this was a power shift. With his estimated $40 million a year deal and growing influence that even crosses over into politics, Stephen A. has become one of the most powerful and untouchable figures in all of sports media. And once you understand that, Molly's departure takes on a completely different meaning. Because this wasn't just about ESPN refusing to pay her what she deserved. It might have been about Stephen A. choosing not to fight for her when it counted most. That's exactly what former ESPN analyst Marcellus Wiley hinted at, and his words are key to understanding the truth behind this fallout. On his podcast, Wiley didn't hold back. He claimed Molly's exit was likely tied to money and respect. According to him, she had been pushing for a raise to around $500,000 a year and even floated the idea of hosting her own show. But instead of backing her, Stephen A. allegedly stayed quiet. Now let's put those numbers into perspective. $500,000 versus $20 million. That's a 40-to-1 pay gap. That's not just a difference in salary. That's a statement about power. It shows who really holds the keys at ESPN and who's just playing along. Wiley's analysis exposed how influence, not just talent, decides who thrives inside that building.
Think about if you're Molly, you're working at a network where Mina Kimes is making way more money than you, and Mina Kimes is the number what on what show, right? You're number 2 on the number 1 show, and she is what on what shows, right? So your point is like, and you know, you see Malika Andrews, all that, that's a different lane, that's a whole different animal, different beat.
He said that Stephen A.'s voice carries serious weight when it comes to other people's contracts. His support can literally make or break careers. So if Molly didn't have his backing, it's no wonder she eventually packed up and left. And honestly, this wouldn't be the first time Stephen A.'s influence shaped someone's future at ESPN. Behind closed doors, he's known to push hard for people he likes and just as easily step aside when he doesn't. Wiley even described it as a pattern. Stephen A. advocates strongly for some co-hosts, but doesn't show that same loyalty to others. So where exactly did Molly fall in that hierarchy? Why didn't he go to bat for her the way he did for others? That's the million-dollar question. To find the answer, you gotta look at how their relationship evolved over the years. On screen, they kept it cool and professional, but there were signs, subtle at first, then more obvious, that their dynamic was getting strained. Publicly, they'd laugh, debate, and act like teammates, but insiders say the tension was real. Take December 2024, for example. During a segment about Bill Belichick possibly coaching at UNC, Molly straight up challenged Stephen A. She accused him of chasing big names and ignoring smaller markets. That exchange got heated. Not playful, not lighthearted, but sharp and uncomfortable. Then came January 2024. During another debate, Stephen A. made a comment about Molly's evolution from host to supermodel status, and she clearly wasn't having it. She muttered something under her breath that fans interpreted as "what the f," and the clip went viral instantly. It didn't look like friendly banter or bandara, it looked like a breaking point. But the most telling moment might have been in June 2025. Cameras accidentally caught Stephen A.'s laptop open during a live broadcast, and it looked like private messages were visible. Molly discreetly leaned over and told him to close it. That's not a co-host moment, that's a damage control moment, and the way she handled it said everything. It wasn't laughter or teasing, it was quiet tension caught in real time. When you piece all of this together, a clear picture starts to form. Molly's exit wasn't just about money, contracts, or a random leak. It was about power, priorities, and who really gets protected at ESPN. Stephen A. had the voice, the pull, and the platform to make sure she got the recognition and compensation she deserved, but instead, he seemed to step back, and that silence spoke volumes. The more you dig, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't an overnight fallout. It was a slow build. Years of small moments, public jabs, and private frustrations finally boiling over. Molly kept it professional, but she wasn't blind. She knew exactly where she stood. And when it became obvious that the same man who built First Take's empire wouldn't fight for her the way he had for others, she did the only thing left to do. She walked away on her own terms. When that awkward on-air moment happened, Stephen A. hesitated at first before finally closing his laptop. Only after Molly calmly warned him it could lead to embarrassment if something private flashed on screen. But the internet twisted the clip, painting Stephen A. as dismissive while portraying Molly as the only professional in the room. Sure, it might have looked like harmless workplace tension, but moments like that don't happen in isolation, not after a decade together on live TV. Stack enough of those small clashes over 10 years, mix in power struggles and contract drama, and suddenly you've got a relationship quietly cracking beneath the surface. Marcellus Wiley later pointed out something major. Molly's farewell message intentionally left out Stephen A.'s name. That wasn't an accident. According to Wiley, that was her way of sending a message without saying a word, showing that her exit was all business, not personal, but also that there were unresolved issues between them. He even suggested her immediate no-warning departure was a strategic move, her way of taking control of the story before ESPN could spin it. Wiley's insight painted a picture of two co-workers who'd simply grown apart professionally, and one of them had finally decided enough was enough. And that brings us to the part that really made people's jaws drop. The idea that Stephen A. Smith, with all his status and pull at ESPN, simply didn't go to bat for Molly when it counted. Think about that for a second. The most powerful man in sports talk, one of the highest paid voices in the industry, and he couldn't or wouldn't use his influence to help his co-host of 10 years. If that's true, it opens a whole can of questions about loyalty, alliances, and how cutthroat sports media really is when money and control are on the line. Now let's break down what happened right after Molly's exit, because ESPN's response speaks volumes. The network publicly framed it as a straightforward business decision, but their actions told a completely different story. Within hours of her announcement, they went into full-on damage control mode. Normally, when someone leaves ESPN, the company issues a short, generic statement, something like, "We wish them the best in their future endeavors," and moves on. But this time, they did the exact opposite. Burke Magnus, ESPN's president of content, personally gave detailed explanations to The Athletic about why and how Molly's departure happened. That's rare, extremely rare, for ESPN's upper brass to speak so openly about internal personnel moves. It was clear they were worried about how this would look to the public, because this wasn't just losing a host, it was losing the face of their most watched morning show, a show already surrounded by rumors of internal conflict. The fact that Magnus broke protocol to publicly discuss Molly's departure shows how nervous ESPN really was.
The details, quite frankly, are none of y'all business, but it's not as if I know all the details. It was a contract negotiation that was going on. ESPN certainly did not want to lose her, but in the end, she made a decision to walk away from the show effective immediately. As you see from her Instagram post, her Instagram story.
They weren't just protecting the brand, they were protecting Stephen A. too. After all, he's their golden ticket, the man who brings in ratings and headlines. So when fans started whispering that maybe he had something to do with her leaving, ESPN had no choice but to start explaining fast before that rumor gained traction. But while the network was trying to calm things down, industry insiders were busy connecting the dots. And again, Marcellus Wiley's breakdown hit the hardest. He made it clear that this wasn't some sudden emotional decision from Molly. It was a move born out of exhaustion and calculation. She had reached her limit. Wiley said she likely realized that no matter how hard she negotiated, her situation at ESPN wasn't going to improve. Not the pay, not the recognition, not the power dynamic. She was stuck in a system where the scale was always tilted towards Stephen A., and she finally decided to walk away rather than waste more months fighting a losing battle. And once you look at ESPN's structure, that logic tracks perfectly. Wiley revealed just how deep the pay and power gaps run within the company, and it's staggering. He mentioned that commentators like Mina Kimes were reportedly making significantly more than Molly, even though Molly was the co-host of the network's flagship show. That's not just unfair, it's a reflection of how ESPN assigns value based on brand image, audience demographics, and internal favoritism. This kind of imbalance tells us something deeper about the entire sports media world. It's not just about talent or hard work, it's about politics, perception, and who has the right allies behind the scenes. Molly's quiet, graceful departure wasn't weakness, it was strategy. She refused to sit at a table where she wasn't being valued the same way as her peers. And by leaving when she did, she exposed the cracks that ESPN had been trying to plaster over for years. In the end, what happened between Molly Qerim and Stephen A. Smith isn't just workplace drama, it's a perfect snapshot of how influence and loyalty collide in the high-stakes world of television. When one person holds all the power, the rest are forced to either play along or walk away. Molly chose the latter, and in doing so, she didn't just step out of Stephen A.'s shadow, she made the whole industry take a long, hard look at who really gets protected and who gets left behind. What this situation really exposes is how being the co-host of First Take, no matter how successful the show became, wasn't valued the same way as other roles inside ESPN's empire. The network built an empire off that show's energy and debate chemistry, yet when it came to Molly Qerim's paycheck, it clearly didn't reflect the impact she had. And honestly, you can't talk about that without touching on the gender dynamics at play, because they're impossible to ignore. When you line up the salaries, the opportunities, and even the on-air exposure between ESPN's male and female personalities, a pattern starts to show. It raises serious questions about how women at the network are valued compared to their male counterparts. It's not just about the money, it's about the message that sends. How can someone like Molly, who held down the biggest morning show in sports TV for nearly a decade, be compensated so much less than others who didn't carry the same cultural weight? It's a glaring imbalance that speaks volumes about how power and perception shape careers behind the scenes. But beyond all that, there's something even deeper going on. The loyalty factor, because when the cameras stopped rolling and Molly walked away, the way Stephen A. Smith handled it told us a lot more than he probably meant to reveal. On the surface, his reaction seemed calm and respectful. He spoke about how surprised he was, how much he admired her, how he wished her the best, but if you listen closely, there's a layer of calculated control in how he spoke. He's saying just enough to look supportive, but not enough to tie himself to the fallout. Notice the way he walked that tightrope. He said things like, "Do I know why she left? Not exactly. Do I have an idea? Of course. But that's her story to tell." It's that mix of distance and awareness that raised eyebrows across the industry. It was like he was trying to be neutral while still dropping just enough breadcrumbs to keep viewers intrigued. And that's exactly what people like Emmanuel Acho called him out for. On the Speakeasy podcast, Acho didn't hold back. He said straight up that Stephen A. seemed to be using Molly's exit as content. He argued that instead of protecting his co-host and keeping things private, Stephen A. fueled the fire. Acho's exact words were biting. From a human perspective, Molly was your sidekick for 10 years. We don't need to know she abruptly resigned. Protect her at all costs. She didn't want it leaked. But now Stephen A., you're the one who told us she resigned. That line hit hard because it cut to the truth of the matter. Loyalty versus leverage. Acho's point was simple but powerful. If Stephen A. truly respected Molly, not just as a co-host but as a colleague and friend, he could have easily spoken about her departure in a way that didn't create more speculation. Instead, his phrasing made people question why she left and what really went down behind the scenes. It's almost as if protecting her reputation took a backseat to maintaining his own image and engagement. That's the uncomfortable side of media politics, where even kindness can be calculated. And when you zoom out from the drama and look at the big picture, it becomes clear that this isn't just about one co-host leaving one show. It's a case study in how power, influence, and perception collide inside high-stakes television. Because in networks like ESPN, relationships are currency, and when they fracture, the effects ripple across everything. The speculation surrounding Molly's next move and the possible impact on First Take's chemistry proves just how massive this shift really is. ESPN isn't just losing a host, they're losing the balance that made the show what it was. You can't just replace 10 years of chemistry, timing, and dynamic debate energy. Viewers felt that connection, and now that she's gone, there's a real question of whether this show can ever capture that same spark again. But maybe the biggest takeaway here is a lesson about how this industry actually works. Success on screen doesn't always mean safety behind the scenes. You can be the face of a show, help build it from the ground up, and still be one bad negotiation away from being replaceable. Media is a brutal game, full of politics, quiet rivalries, and decisions made in boardrooms that never see the light of day. For Molly Qerim, leaving First Take was both a goodbye and a statement. Her immediate exit showed that she had already made peace with walking away. It wasn't just a resignation, it was self-respect. She realized that her worth wasn't being recognized, and rather than staying in a system that limited her growth, she decided to bet on herself and build something new. That's a power move, and one that might inspire a lot of women in media to start demanding more. As for Stephen A. Smith, this chapter exposed the limits of his influence. Sure, he's ESPN's king of commentaries, but this situation proved that power without loyalty can come at a cost. His reaction and how he chose to handle it will probably be studied for years as an example of how not to manage a co-star's exit. And for ESPN, the challenge now is survival. They've got to maintain First Take's momentum while rebuilding trust inside their own walls. Because once these stories about inequality and internal tension start circulating, they can't be unseen. The way they handle Molly's replacement and how the new dynamic plays out will show whether ESPN learned anything from this fallout or just patched the cracks to keep the lights on. Either way, one thing's clear. This wasn't just another resignation, it was a turning point that exposed the hidden rules of the game, where loyalty is conditional and even the biggest names can find themselves standing alone when the cameras stop rolling. And when you zoom out beyond ESPN, this story becomes so much bigger than just one host leaving one show. It's a warning to the entire sports media world. It shows how quickly trust can crumble, how fast alliances can shift, and how one business decision can reshape entire careers overnight. Molly Qerim's exit isn't just about a contract or a co-host change. It's about what happens when power, loyalty, and perception collide in the public eye. Her story is now a mirror reflecting the realities of modern television, where success comes with pressure, influence comes with politics, and loyalty can vanish the moment ratings or money enter the conversation. It's a reminder that even the most polished on-screen partnerships can be full of tension once the lights go off. The Molly Qerim departure saga is far from finished, and the fallout is only beginning to unfold. As Molly moves toward her next chapter and First Take tries to regain its footing without her, one thing's for sure. The next few months are going to reveal a lot about who really runs the game behind the cameras. Will ESPN bounce back stronger, or will this fracture expose deeper issues inside the network's culture? Time will tell, but the world will definitely be watching. If you enjoyed diving into this breakdown, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories, power moves, and behind-the-scenes drama shaping the media world today. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the next twist in this ongoing saga.